We all wish we could ship her with Basilio, but Flavia is still awesome anyway. Just like him, Flavia's stats vary a lot based on the difficulty, so I'm listing her hard mode stats here because that's the mode I'm playing on, and on hard mode, her starting stats are really good. She has great speed and skill, while not skimping in strength and defense. Both of those stats are kind of decent, though her defense is a little bit lowish. Her luck is fairly decent as well, so really the only thing that kind of holds her back in terms of base stats, at least on hard mode, is her resistance. On lunatic mode, her starting stats are even higher than this, but again, so are the enemy stats, so it kind of balances out. On normal though, other characters you promoted to hero, actually, the second generation heroes will probably outclass her anyway, and Donnie as a hero will still outclass her. But Gregor, on hard, Gregor will probably not have better stats than her by this point in the game. On normal, he might be a bit better than her, so it kind of depends, but I'm talking hard mode here. Though Flavia is actually quite different from Gregor, unlike the way that Basilio is actually very similar to Vake, so there actually isn't all that much competition between them because, like I've said, Flavia is quite different. If you look at her growth rates, Flavia focuses more on skill and speed as a hero, rather than HP, strength and defense like Gregor did, so she's more of a speed hero, but she doesn't really skimp on power or defense at all, because her bases in those areas are still quite good. It's just that her skill and speed growths are even better. Her luck is pretty decent too. So Flavia is quite balanced in terms of growth rates, but she mostly leans towards skill and speed. Her caps are also fairly nice and balanced for a hero. +1 to strength, skill and speed, basically the three main stats that you'll need. She does have -1 to defense though, so in the long run she will be a bit weak defensively, but when you specialize in skill and speed like she does, that's not really all that much of a problem. Overall, in terms of caps and in terms of growths and also bases, Flavia can be best described as a pretty decent mix of speed and power. She is not the best at either speed or power, but she's decent at both, and that gives her a pretty unique niche. As for class options, Flavia starts out as a pre-promoted hero, and due to her level, she already has both of the skills from Mercenary, Arms Thrift and Patience. Arms Thrift is definitely the more useful one, and it's a good thing that she automatically starts with this, because if she didn't, I would highly recommend that you reclass her back to Mercenary and get it, because Arms Thrift is an amazing skill in this game. She already has enough luck at base to pretty much have a 50% chance of saving a weapon use every time she attacks. And that is, well, yeah, that's really useful. She also starts with Soul immediately, and that's one thing that Basilio doesn't have, an activation rate skill immediately. So that can be useful for healing her a bit, especially seeing as her defense is not all the best, so she could use the healing sometimes. And with her good skill stats, she'll be activating Soul quite a lot. If you keep her in Hero until level 15, she'll learn Axe Breaker, which, I guess in some ways that could be useful for her and make her even better against axe users. Almost all of her class options are capable of using swords anyway, so it's not like she has any trouble against axe users in the first place. But I guess it is sort of nice to have, especially since she can also go to Bow Knight and get another breaker skill, Bow Breaker. Again, she doesn't really have much of a problem with bows, especially seeing as she has no flying classes in her options, so they're not much of a threat to her anyway, but an extra 50% evasion against annoying cowards who just try and shoot her from long range is at least okay. Rally skill is also alright, and she does get rally defense from general as well, but only 2 rally skills, and rally skill is not exactly the best of them, so I don't really consider that useful of an option. Now, Flavia's other 2 class branches are quite interesting, because they really fit with that whole mix of speed and power deal she has going on. On the speed side, she has the Thief class, which this is actually really useful. Not only will it give her better skill and speed, even better skill and speed, but she'll learn some really good skills. I still maintain that some of the skills from the Thief branch are some of the best in the game. Movement +1 is always useful, Lock Touch is good in maps that have chests, Lethality instantly kills things, and with her good skill stat, it'll activate quite often. Pass lets you move through enemies as if they weren't there. Again, very, very useful. Lucky 7, plus 20 accuracy and evasion for the first 7 turns. Acrobat, ignore terrain penalties. All of these skills are really amazing, so you can't go wrong by getting these skills from the Thief branch. Of course, if you want to buff her a bit more on the power side of things, go to Armor Knight. This is a class option that she shares with Basilio, interestingly enough. Like him, the regular skills from the base class Armor Knight are not the best, but the higher tier classes do have some good skills. Rally Defense is also somewhat useful, though personally I think Basilio makes for a better Rally user because he also gets Rally Strength. Pervise is also useful. Flavia's defense later on in the game will be lagging a bit with the -1 cap, so I wouldn't recommend keeping her in General because she'll do a pretty bad job at it. But getting these skills from General and using them in Hero will make her a bit more durable, which can be pretty useful. Great Knight will give her the Luna skill, which she'll be able to combine Sol and Luna. Well, I mean, Basilio can do that too, but still. And have a chance of doing even more damage, which is pretty nice. And Jewel Guard Plus is also useful, not quite as good as Basilio would make out of it because her defense cap is -1. But still, it is kind of useful. So, these class options are actually really interesting for Flavia because she's got Hero, which is, again, as a class, a mix of power and speed. And then she has the Thief branch to improve the speed side of things, and the Armor Knight branch to improve the power side of things. So, again, Flavia is a really interesting jack of all trades. She's, well, she can really do anything well except heal as a trickster. She'll be pretty bad at that, so I wouldn't recommend going that. Like, what else is new? There have been very few characters that I've recommended using as tricksters in this game. But anyway, Flavia may not be the best in both the strength and the speed departments, but she's decent at both, and that's in her class options too, so she can be very useful. Of course, one thing that lets down both her and Basilio is a lack of support options. Their only supports are the Avatar and each other, so this is where first generation and second generation characters kind of have them beat, and Basilio and Flavia are pretty good in terms of raw stats, but they do lose out in terms of support, so bear that in mind if you want to use them. As for voice acting, Flavia is voiced by Tara Platt, who I've already explained because she also voices Muriel in this game. And unlike a lot of other cases of shared voice actors between characters, like for example, Faria and Shell having the same voice actress, which is pretty insane because they're very, very different. But this one does annoy me somewhat because it is pretty easy to tell that Flavia has the same voice actress as Muriel. Flavia is basically a more deeper voiced version of Muriel in terms of her voice clips, and Flavia is also the type of character that Tara Platt very often voices. A strong, confident female warrior leader. I mean, yeah, look at a list of all of Tara Platt's roles and just count off the number of them that are exactly that type of character. It's a lot of them. I promised though that I'd point out something about Tara Platt that I didn't in the Muriel video once I got to Flavia here. And that's what I'm going to do now. One thing that I want to mention is a role of hers that I didn't talk about last time. With this, and with a lot of Tara Platt's roles sounding basically the same, I always worried to myself that her vocal range wasn't exactly the best. She often tended to sound pretty much the same in a lot of her roles. And then I found out that she voiced someone, and I was actually quite surprised about it. Tara Platt voices Elizabeth in Persona 3 and in all of Elizabeth's other appearances in the Persona series. And this I found really interesting because Elizabeth sounds nothing like a lot of Tara Platt's other roles. Tara Platt voices someone else in Persona 3 who sounds almost exactly like Flavia, so the distinction is even more apparent. In fact, when I first heard that Elizabeth was voiced by Tara Platt, I did a double take for a few moments because I thought, okay, wow, she actually does have range. This is actually pretty interesting. Because yeah, for those of you who've heard what Elizabeth sounds like, she's actually quite different to most of Tara Platt's normal roles. And in fact, when I met Tara Platt in a convention, she actually said she had a lot of fun voicing Elizabeth. Understandable, since Elizabeth is, well, let's just say extremely out there. Admittedly, there is exactly one point where she's voicing Elizabeth where she kind of turns back into her Muriel/Flavia voice, but I'm not going to talk about that here because it's not exactly relevant. That's not to say that I might not have a chance to talk about it someday. I'll just leave you with that for now.